Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show, it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of the Equalizer. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, first and foremost in this episode, we have the whole situation of Robin and the team getting their first kind of official case after putting the posting out there about someone needing help. And it turns out it's a mom whose son was kidnapped, and she's in this situation where obviously she can't turn to the cops or anything, which is even more complicated because it turns out the person she kind of works for, she kind of babysits this FBI agent's kids. They want her to break into a safe and get whatever's in there, whatever the contents in, to them, and she'll get her son back. So now it turns into a whole situation of Robin and the team has to figure out what's in the safe first and foremost, because if they can find out what's in the safe, that'll kind of give them an idea of what's going on, like what's so important that they're going to such measures to do it. So obviously Harry has this reluctancy to kind of get involved in the sense of like, oh, because it would involve him going out in public, and obviously it's like, I'm supposed to be dead. Because at first it's like, why don't you hack the FBI? It's like, no, they have hackers who are, people like me to track down people like me. So but I also love, like, this episode also kind of give us a nice little look into Melanie and Harry's relationship, in the sense that Melody was like, it's like, because Harry's like, where's that charger? She's like, oh yeah, I'm using it. He's like, what happened to all the other chargers we bought? She's like, sometimes I hide them away just so he can, because he's so cute when he's annoyed and flustered. She's like, so she kind of does that on purpose. But also later on when he's like, oh, you Googled this. He's like, don't worry, I'm a clear away your cookies for you. And it's like, oh wow, you move stuff around. And like, he's very particular about how he wants stuff. And it's just like, how much is just her just doing her thing. It just seems like they're like, at least the way they're setting this up to be just kind of like they're the odd couple, that he's very, I think, type A in certain regards, and she's a little more like go with the flow type. So it seems like they're just kind of like the odd couple pairing, and I think that's kind of a cute element to it. But breaking into the FBI agent's house, they ended up, were able to hack into the safe and found out like it's an FBI file on someone. A lot of it's been redacted, and then they ultimately end up finding out over the course of it, because Robin was able to kind of track the two guys that were involved thanks to Harry. And so it turns into a situation that they end up finding out that tracking these guys, and it turns out they were literally about to burn two people alive. Luckily Robin showed up and was just kind of like, back away. She's going to kind of let you guys live. They tried to both act fast, bam, bam, put them down. And it's like, you guys didn't know who you were messing with either. So, but hearing the story from the person she had saved was like, okay, so it turns out these are women that were brought to this country. It's like, oh, they're going to be models, but then it turns out they were basically brought into like sex trafficking and just kind of used to get close to very rich and powerful people, because this all deals with some quote-unquote businessman that was Mikkel. He's like the main one behind this, because like there's the woman whose file they found in the safe, Nicola. It turns out she's the informant keeping an eye on him, because the FBI is trying to take down his operations, but obviously it hasn't been easy, because he's looking for a mole in his operation. And that's what this whole file was about, because he knew that the FBI agent had the file at home, because it turns out the FBI actually has a mole. One of his moles is actually in there. So it's just like, it is interesting, like almost espionage. Well, not almost, it's definitely like espionage level thing of, oh, there's two moles, and it's like, trying to expose, essentially, you don't want the bad guys to finding out your mole, you want to find out the bad guy's mole. But the woman that Robin had saved from getting burned alive, her and the dude, I think it was kind of like the guy that she had told everything to. What was his name, like Finn or something? Like, it's like she had told him everything, and they were trying to leave, and obviously they got caught, because it's like, oh, they wanted to find out who was the mole and wondering whether it was them or not. Especially her, because like, oh, you told someone. So Robin ended up giving them money. It's like, yeah, go ahead, and this is your bus ticket. Just go ahead and get out of town, because it's like, but kind of informing like all that they had been through. And so she's the one that kind of informed him about where Jackson potentially would be held, because she's like, the room that they would hold him in, like changing light and like the sound, and it turned out it was on a near a docking area for like boats and stuff. And I thought it was so like when it's like, okay, so what do you know what's the plan? It's like, I would go in and get him, and then Melody's like, wait, what? That's really it? It's like, yeah, I got this. And it's like, shouldn't we be armed? She's like, I got this, the clipboard and everything. It's like, oh yeah, like there's an inspection, asbestos, and the guy's like, well, I don't know, and she takes it down. I like that in action sequences where it's just like, yeah, you use like the most random object, and I love that she kind of uses it again, and it's like they're walking, run to another guy. She's like, the asbestos, throws the like clipboard out. That's also one of my favorite moves in like action sequences too. It's like when you throw something, someone they catch it and you like beat the shit out of it. She even grabbed it at one point and bashed it over his head and was like, oh. And she's even Melody being impressed, being like, oh, you've definitely learned a thing or two since we saw each other last time in like Kandahar. But they were able to save other women, but just not Jackson because he ended up getting moved. Which I also love how this connects into Dante because Dante's been looking into Robin, but he can't find anything about her. Like, obviously, a lot of her records and everything about her has been, wiped clean purposely. Obviously, the two guys that were trying to burn that lady and her dude, those guys, obviously, it ended up falling into Dante's jurisdiction, and it's like, hey. And it's like, oh, a witness kind of says, like, hey, there was an older black lady that kind of led these two people away. And it's like, all right, so give me all the information you got about this. And then, but the FBI's like, yeah, this is our case. You kind of have the bail. It's like, have you seen this lady? And it's like, no. But then later on, when all those sex trafficked women were let go, that's when the FBI agent's like, oh, so this lady was involved here. So he actually goes to he asks Dante about it. And it's like, so who is she? Good guy, bad guy? Is she a liability? Help? It's like, oh, she seems to be doing, she ended up saving a girl last time. She's, doing good. Because they had said, I forgot, they had said it's been like a couple weeks or something like that. Maybe. Like in between last episode and this episode, like it's been some time frame. But he's like, for him, you can tell he's kind of a stickler he's that type of dude that's like, I'm all about getting justice the right way. It's like, he doesn't like the idea of personal citizens, taking justice into their own hand. But I think Sandler, the FBI agent, I think he's got a little more leeway just because it's like, oh, you're helping me take down her. Because even he was like, yeah, these guys weren't good people. They were bad guys. And it's like, oh, almost sounds like an angel. And he's like, an angel killing people. Does that sound like an angel? And it's like an avenging one. Like, so his perspective on it, I'm wondering if any information really else came up. Would he had given Dante anything else about Robin or not? Because he was just kind of like, well, if there's anything else, I'll let you know. He's like, please do. But it's like I said, it just seemed like Sandler was kind of like, I'm more on her side of things. Because once again, I think that's going to be the thing of like, some people are going to have that view of justice where it's like, you're having someone who's kind of operating outside of the law because the law can only go so far, So, which obviously I'm sure Dante would be like, if we handle things more legally. I mean, I think Robin also has this perspective also because she worked with the CIA, and the CIA, I'm sure, cut like a lot of corners. So it's just that thing of like, you have your guidelines in certain regards, but I'm sure that CIA always found their ways around things. So I'm sure a little bit of that's there, but also just being like, the law isn't always in the favor of the person, like, who's in trouble. It doesn't always benefit like the victim. Sometimes you need an outside, ringer in your corner to kind of like balance the scales to a certain extent. So, but now it's a situation of, okay, they're desperate and now they're moving up the timetable of like, we need these files by now. And, the little boy's mom is desperate. She's pointing a gun at Robin, being like, what's in that file. Like, I'm not going to lose my boy. And, like, obviously Robin as a parent understands. And it's like, all right, you're right. I know what's in there. I know the code. I know what's in the file. We're going to use that to our advantage. We're going to get your son back, and was able to kind of get her to lower her gun. Because obviously this case hits Robin to the certain point. Like when it first got brought to her, when she got back home, what's the first thing she did? She hugged her daughter because it was like, yeah, I don't, it's one of those things that like, people always say you kind of appreciate what you have because, because I think, probably, that little boy was probably just about the same age as her own daughter. So it probably just hit her a little too close to home in that regard. But I liked how they kind of flipped the script on like what was his name? Like I said it earlier. I think it was Mikkel. Like was able to kind of flip the script on him by being like showing up with his girlfriend. It's like, hey, we got her, kind of got her hostage and everything. So hand over Jackson and she won't get hurt. And even him being like, well, I love her, but I don't know how much, whether she cares about me the same way. And if she doesn't, then this will kind of all be a moot point. But like the moment you're about to hand over the file, I'm like, the fact that you have her with you must mean that you made it his right-hand man, and it turned out to be his right hand. And so they were able to set up the situation and kind of get them pointing guns at each other. So I was like, okay, poor bastard. I mean, granted, it's not like he's a good guy anyway. So having his employer think he's the mole and everything. So luckily they were able to get away. And, you know, Nicola was kind of happy to help in the situation because for her, well, it's not her real name, but she was happy to help because it's like Mikkel had ruined her life. So she was trying to make sure someone else's life, and at the end of the day, didn't get ruined. So obviously they all ended up going to Sandler, and he goes to the right-hand guy and is like, hey, Mikkel's going to come after you and kill you because he thinks you're a traitor, so why not take him down first? So in that one moment, they were able to take down this operation and the mole inside of the FBI as well. So things kind of worked out in the end. The episode did also present other interesting elements. Well, for one, obviously Delilah was kind of being a little hush-hush about some like things she was a part of, and her Robin's aunt was able to kind of like coax it out of her, and it turns out like she's got this solo part in like a chorus thing, and she didn't tell Robin because of Robin's job. Robin always kind of bails at the last minute because something always comes up, and it's that complicated thing of like, I'm sure it's a thing of like, yeah, I know my mom's doing charitable stuff, but it's still the thing of like, I'm your daughter, like, you bail time and time and time again, and it's just like, she was just tired of the disappointment, but her Aunt Vive was trying to tell her, like, hey, your mom's trying to do things differently. She's not going to do the traveling as much anymore. She's home. She's taking a job that, will make it sure that she's home. So, and that, the sad thing is Robin tries her best, but then, like, obviously, the timetable got moved up. So, and her daughter's like, no, I told Aunt Vibe that you weren't going to shit. So it's like, fine, it's whatever. Like, she's almost like, yeah, it's my own fault for actually believing in you, getting excited that you would actually show up, which is heartbreaking, I even love that line from Melody where it's like, that's why I hate kids. They get mad at you. They get kidnapped. I was like, I love that second one is what you also add into that, which is effed up to say during the current circumstances, but hey. Nevertheless, but luckily because they were able to kind of wrap things up because Melody and the others were like, hey, you go ahead. We got this covered. And she was actually able to be there for her daughter's performance. Because another complicated angle to this whole thing is that the CIA was basically sending a cease and desist to her because it's like, hey, you're not working with the company, don't do what you're doing, your little like freelance psychic, yeah. Unless you want to come back to us, then you can do whatever you want. Because at first I'm like, why does it matter what she's doing? Because I guess it's like, regardless of anything, she's a former operative, and the last thing, they can't really have their former operative out there doing stuff, because if she's out there doing stuff that's not sanctioned by them, and at the very least, if she isn't a part of the company, that means she's doing this unsanctioned stuff, and it's just kind of like, anything she does could potentially fall back on them. So it's at least if she's in their wheelhouse, they're at least a little more, they can maneuver a little bit more. I think more so than anything, it's more so they can get Robin back. They wanted an excuse of something to kind of be like, hey, because even Bishop was like, yeah, don't do this because you put in your little posting out there, which they also found out about, you're going to go to war with them. You don't want to do that. And it's like, yeah, they don't want to go to war with me either. Even to the point, like, later on, that guy's in the car just staring at her when she's in the car with her daughter, and it's like, the car won't start. And I'm like, I thought it was connected to the case she was working on. Not necessarily, it was the CIA just, like, being petty and being like, yeah, you never know. Like, the way they were implying that in particular agent made it seem like, if need be, they would even mess up the cases she worked. Like, she'd be in the middle of a case, and it's like, just to kind of stick it to her, they would, like, intervene. It seemed like they would even go that far. But I'm like, man, this is... for one, taking it, like, what was it, an electric... plug from like her vehicle. I was like, that's super petty. But it's like, yeah, we're going to start off super petty in this regard, but then it seemed like if things keep going down this route, we'll escalate it even more, get even more and more and more petty. So that was an interesting development. So Robin has decided, all right, to kind of ease all of this all around, she is going to return to the company because she can't be dealing with going to war with them. So, all right, I'll work with the company, but I have some stipulations. I only do freelance work, and it has to be jobs that I check into and find out are worthy, like are worth, like, you know, someone really needs my help, like my expertise and what I can do for them. So, granted, you know, the CIA is going to try and manipulate that in some shape or form, but she's like, if they try to lie to me, they come near me or my family, I'm done, you know. And obviously Bishop's like, all right, I can set that in motion, you know, but also finding out, like, you know, it's interesting, like, the name she has as the Equalizer coming from, like, I think, what was it, like, I think she had referenced, like, in Kandahar, they had given, well, I think he's the one that brought up, like, the name they had given her in Kandahar, and she says it translates to the Equalizer because she always, because it stems from her kind of, you know, leveling the playing field. Like I said, it very much reminds me. Once again, I'm going to keep saying that, and once again, maybe at one point I'll shut up. Just because I like the show so much, and I like that it has similar vibe to it. It's like the more irrelevant numbers and, you know, person of interest. It kind of reminds me of that in certain regards. So I'm interested, you know, how much of their, well, not even just hers, but also like Harry and Melody's past we're going to dive into, how this balancing act with the company, how that's going to work and what that's going to look like going forward. Obviously being there for her daughter, showing her daughter like, hey, things are going to change. Granted, work is going to complicate her relationship with her daughter. It's going to get even more complicated with like Dante breathing on her. I mean, at least with the company's help. Granted, she's got Harry and Melody to back her up, but with the company's help, I'm sure they're going to be able to like sweep away a lot of like Dante's personal investigations and stuff like that. Granted, he can't find anything on her, but still, that's eventually going to lead to probably crossing paths where he eventually enters her personal life, in a sense. Like he tracks her down at home and has a conversation, confronts her in front of her daughter and aunt, without revealing anything, just being like, oh, I'm a detective looking into something. Hi, like, oh, Robin, have we met before? We'll see whether anything becomes of that, but I feel like this is definitely the type of show that would kind of have a set up something, you know, of a similar vein, so. But obviously, like I said, their freelance thing, like, obviously their first successful, like, oh, we got hired for this particular job, so that went off with the hitch, so it's going to be interesting to see what other, you know, jobs they get offered, like I said, like, how the CIA kind of coincides with that, like whether they will keep their word or not, or will they try to manipulate certain situation. Once again, she said not to lie to her, but it's like they'll probably withhold information. They might even set up some fake, like, oh yeah, this case came our way. Or there might be some cases they might feed to her. It won't be cases that just come to her. It probably will be cases they feed to her. She'll decide whether or not she wants it or not. Like I said, it might be a thing of they might lie to her, but eventually she's like, I've decided this case warrants me taking it on, so. But, yeah, I'm interested to see where all this takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.